Welcome everyone inside the RX Muscle Studios in Westbury, New York for another episode of Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Go now to speciesnutrition.com. Check out the new website. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. Glad you can join us on this Wednesday afternoon. 30 minutes, question and answers. Get your questions in now. You can either chime in on the Muscle Central Forum on rxmuscle.com, our official Instagram page, Facebook page, Twitter page, using hashtag AskDave, or you can ask your questions in the live stream live chat box. And with that, we now bring in Dave Palumbo. Dave, I understand you have a television commitment on Friday morning. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit more about that?
Well, I'm going down to Florida because I'm so pale. I don't think I've ever been this pale in the last 10 years. I have to get a tan. I have to restore my tan. So I'm going down to Florida, and we have a friend down there who last time we were down there, they got me on Wink News. And the problem with Wink News is that the show starts at like 6 in the morning or something like that. So I got to get there really early. And but it's exciting because I get to go on there and act as the nutritional expert. And we're going to talk a little bit, I think, today about detoxing your body, fiber, the importance of it, and what it will do for you. And I think that it's something that a lot of the people out there in America, in the world, don't really know much about. They don't understand that the colon is a muscle. It needs to be worked out, in essence, and fiber is the only thing that's going to do that. And there's a lot of important health benefits that I guess you can say result from taking a good fiber supplement every day. And I'm going to fill the general masses in on it.
So if you happen to be in the Southwest Florida area, check it out. Is your local CBS affiliate, and that is Wink News, Friday morning in the 6 o'clock newscast. Let's get to the questions again if you want to join us.
I want to make one more statement, too, because, we'll be down at Big Mel Chancey's gym, also down there, which is very close to where Amanda and my house is as well. I'll be making an appearance there. So if any of you guys want to come down on, I believe that's Thursday evening, I'll be there answering questions, and we'll be having a good grand old time there. We're gonna get a little training in, and then go to dinner. So anyone who wants to stop by and say hello, I'd love to meet all you guys. So.
All right, with that, let's get to the questions. Dave, we're going to start in the Muscle Central Forum on rxmuscle.com, and if you're not already a member, it is free to register. This one from user Go Home. Dave, what's your opinion on the recent outcry by Arnold about big guts or distended stomachs not being penalized by the judges? Do you agree the judging criteria should change with more stricter enforcement, or do you think the current judging is appropriate for the modern era? Also, how much blame do you cast on the coaches/gurus for allowing the distended stomachs to get out of hand? Isn't it ultimately their guidance that's leading to the problem?
I've talked about this on Heavy Muscle Radio before. The problem is that if you ask any bodybuilder, they never think they're big enough. And look, I was a bodybuilder. I was over 300 pounds. I know the mentality. You never think you're big enough. You always think you can add a little bit more muscle here or there. And what happens ultimately is when you put too much muscle on your frame and doesn't aesthetically look good anymore, it looks freaky. And it looks, the fans love it. And the photo shoots look great. It looks great in the gym. But it doesn't flow that well on stage. Look, it's happened to a lot. It happened to Ronnie Coleman toward the end of his career. It happened to Kai Green a little bit. Ruli Winkler, we were talking about him. So, even Branch Warren's, got a lot of muscle on that short frame. So, what happens is the stomach starts to bulge. And I think that the solution is that the judges have to vote with what's up there. So if a guy who's aesthetically way better than everyone and looks just as good muscle size wise and conditioning is up there, you should go with that guy because that guy's got it all. If there's a guy, if there's no one up there with the great aesthetics, or if the guy with the great aesthetics maybe isn't in the best condition, then you got to go with the guy who maybe might have more muscle, even if he's not as aesthetically good. So it's a combination of symmetry, size, conditioning, flow. And freakiness is definitely a factor in there. Freakiness wins shows sometimes, and that's just the way it goes, But, if you had the best of the best up there, aesthetics will always win in that case.
Dave, let's check in with our Twitter audience. This question from @BodybuildingLG. Dave, what do you think of the new FDA panel-approved fat cell killer spot reduction injectable drug ATX-101?
You know what? I've seen a lot of spot injection drugs come and go, and you know what? Every single one of them has never panned out. what happens is these companies, they do experimentation with these drugs, and they get some data that actually will support the fact that their product actually does something, in cell culture, or maybe even in human studies, there's like a 3% increase. Real world, it never pans out. You always spend way more money than you really need to get such a very small, minute change. I don't buy it until I see it actually physically working on people with miracle transformations. I haven't seen it, and I haven't read any research to date that will show that anything you can inject locally will actually mobilize fat. Aside from the fact that of sticking a liposuction wand into your abdomen, that'll take the fat out.
Dave, let's check in with our Instagram page. Again, our Instagram handle is @official_RX Muscle. This question from Mr. C Shadows. Dave, what do you guys think about prep coaches and teams that sponsor shows like the SoCal Muscle Contest and conflicts of interest? At these shows, it's always 3 popular teams that always have their athletes winning. Coincidentally, these 3 teams are the only teams that sponsor some of the shows, and it seems there's a big discrepancy there.
Well, I think the problem is the fact that, well, it's not really a problem. The reality of the situation is in that area, in that we were speaking about California, in California area, a lot of the people that compete there belong to these team members, to these teams. I don't whether they think they're going to help them or not, or whether they just want the guidance or not. So a lot of the best people are on those teams. So when you see a lot of winners from one particular team, well, I mean, if half the people in the show are on the team, you're going to see most of the winners from the team. So I don't necessarily know if that's helping. Now, obviously, if the team coach or who's ever running these teams is sponsoring the show, it looks suspicious. But once again, it goes back to what percentage of the people in the show are on that team. Now, if we see blatant cases of people who are great, say bodybuilders who are losing to people who are not as good, then I would say we need to investigate further. I haven't heard too much of that. So, but then again, when you start talking about bikini and figure, it's so subjective. You can or men's physique, you can kind of go either way. I'm sure anyone who's putting up some dollars as a sponsor is going to get their athlete's going to get a better look, but it doesn't mean that the judges are going to necessarily put the person whose physique is worse ahead of another person because of that. And so, everyone loves to have conspiracy theories about these type of things. 99% of them are not true. Every once in a while, 1% of the time, something happens that is almost too suspicious to be coincidence.
Let's go back to the RX Muscle Central forum. Dave, this question's from Strained and Gained. How do you think Chris Tuttle will fare at the New York Pro? He brings a different look to the 212 division with a more streamlined midsection and a bit taller than the average 212 competitor. Do you think he has the potential to be the quote-unquote Cedric of the smaller guys?
I don't know about the Cedric McMillan of the small guys, but I will say one thing about Chris Tuttle. I really like his physique. I've seen him for years competing, and he's taken big amounts of time off. He went back to dirt bike riding for a while, and now he's back, obviously, in bodybuilding full time. I actually have a training video of him when he turned pro 2 years ago, and it's I still haven't done the voiceover for it, so maybe we'll get it up before his pro debut here. The great thing about Chris is that he's so he never thinks he looks good, but yet he never really does bad at a show. He's always either won shows or coming top 3. So I think Chris will be a surprise at New York Pro. I think he'll do very well. I don't know if he'll win, but I have a feeling we'll see him in the top 5.
Let's go back to the rxmuscle.com Muscle Central Forum. This question is from PTB. Dave, I've read conflicting information saying if you have a nut allergy, it's okay to use an oil like peanut oil in cooking because the allergen that is in the peanuts is not, and in the parentheses, or should not be in the oil. Is this true, and would you recommend a nut oil to one who's allergic to nuts, even your own MacNut oil?
I'll answer the question in another way. I'm into snakes. Everyone knows I'm into snakes, boa constrictors, and ball pythons, carpet pythons. Anyway, these are all constrictor snakes. They're not poisonous. The poisonous snakes that are really cool, though, are like the cobras with the big hooded snakes, and they have these white cobras, and they actually can devenomize them, where they take the venom glands out and they fill the venom glands with porcelain. And I was always thinking, maybe I should get one of those. That sounds really cool. But then I'm thinking, would I want to get bitten? What if I got bitten and all the venom wasn't out of there? Now I'm dead just because I wanted this stupid snake. Same thing with these oils. I mean, if an oil says, it's a peanut oil, but it doesn't have any peanut allergens in it, I wouldn't take a chance because it's done by human, there's human error there. What if there is a little bit of allergen left in it and you're going to use this oil and you're going to go into anaphylactic shock? Not a good idea. Stick with extra virgin olive oil if you have nut allergies.
Dave, let's check in with our live stream, live chat box users. This question from Pedro Prez. A competitor who's 8 weeks out from a show, which peptide would you recommend to come in optimal shape?
I'm so sick of hearing about these peptides. Peptides, hormones are not, I guess you could say, people think they're like the newest, like greatest thing that are going to like revolutionize the bodybuilding world. They don't really do very much. Okay. They're just available more easily because of the fact that people sell them on websites as research chemicals and people can get them more easily. The IGF-1 peptide is pretty good out there in terms of for adding a little bit of growth, potential in the off season. The GHRPs are not bad for growth hormone release, but they don't really do anything significantly. More so for me, I think that they really increase your appetite. A lot of people use them for appetite increasing. Some of the tanning peptides, like the melanotan 2, is nice if you want to get a sunless tan. But by and far, there's nothing you're going to take out there that's going to compare to like growth hormone or something like that, or anabolic steroids. They just don't do that type of stuff, and they're not that strong.
Dave, we go back to the rxmuscle.com Muscle Central Forum. This question from NBAR Yosef. Dave, first, this show smells like a sweaty gym. All right, let me ask you a question and get out of here. My thyroid was removed due to cancer cells. How do I gain muscles without it, and which diet works best without a thyroid? Keto, high carb, or anything else?
Well, if you had your thyroid removed, I'm assuming you're on thyroid replacement. I mean, that's pretty cause and effect in that sense. Once they put you on thyroid replacement, I mean, thyroid is an easy hormone to replace because it's not pulsed out all day long. You take one dose in the morning every day when you wake up, and you've basically replaced what your thyroid naturally does. Usually doctors will give you a T4 derivative like Synthroid, T4 being the inactive thyroid hormone. This way your body can take that inactive precursor and turn it into active T3, and then your body can do whatever it needs to do metabolically speaking. So you really shouldn't be at a metabolic disadvantage. If anything, you're probably at a metabolic advantage because when you're dieting now, you don't have to worry, is my thyroid producing enough hormone? You always know you're getting enough because you're taking a replacement dose.
Let's go back to our Instagram page. This question from, I'm just going to spell it out, at REITEPEILJA. Dave, simple question. Smith machine squats versus leg press.
Well, I mean, it's squats versus leg press. It's two different exercises, really. If you're going to vary anything, you might want to vary free weight squats versus Smith machine squats. That's probably a better comparison. And I still think free weights always far surpasses anything you're to do on a machine because the Smith machine is going to stabilize the weight for you. Now, if you compare squats to leg press, which would be like comparing Smith machine to leg press, there's no comparison either. The best mass building exercise for legs and to give the greatest shape to your legs would be squats, free weight squats, because you have to balance that bar. Once the balance comes into play, you get full development. When you're on a leg press machine or even a Smith machine, the machine is stabilizing the weight. So the stabilizing muscles are not working per se. They don't need to do anything. All you have to do is kind of push against the weight with your the top of your traps, and your legs are going to lift the weight. So you're going to get leg development, but you're not going to get as complete a leg development. So I usually recommend a free weight squat, then as a second exercise, a hack squat or a leg press. And that's usually a nice combination.
You're watching Ask Dave on rxmuscle.com, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Visit speciesnutrition.com. We go back now to our users on the live stream, live chat boxes. Question from Shaq. Dave, what do you think about the excessive amounts of caffeine, and he mentions 300 to 400 milligrams in pre-workout supplements? Do you think these amounts are safe for long-term use in terms of heart and adrenal health?
I absolutely do not think they're safe, and I think there's a lot more than just 300 milligrams or 400 milligrams of caffeine, which is like 4 cups of coffee. They put other stimulants in there, and there's a lot of questionable ones that aren't even legal that are being put into these pre-workouts, and I think it's a very dangerous problem out there because people feel, I'm jacked, I feel great. They're really not experiencing the greatness of a pre-workout. They're experiencing the greatness of taking speed, essentially. And the worst drug a bodybuilder can take, and I always said this, is speed. cocaine, amphetamines. Terrible drug for bodybuilders because it stresses the adrenals out. It raises cortisol levels, which is catabolic to the muscle, okay? It suppresses immune system, and it kills your appetite. I mean, what worse drug can you give to a bodybuilder? Bodybuilders need stuff that relaxes them so they can heal and recover and keep cortisol and stress levels low. That's the way you build muscle. I was never a huge believer in overstimulating the body into doing things. We have Nitrolize as my pre-workout for Species Nutrition, and we have a stim-free one, which works terrifically. And you'll find out when you use it, hey, this is what a pre-workout's supposed to do. It's supposed to give you a pump. It's supposed to increase endurance, mental focus. And then if you want to if you want a little bit of stimulation, we put a buffered caffeine in our Nitrolize S formula, which has about 200 milligrams. So it's about 2 cups of coffee. And that's about as high as you really want to go. I personally, I don't use the stim one. I know there are a lot of people out there that need a little pick-me-up. Maybe they had a long day. When they go to the gym, they want a little pick-up. There's no reason to be taking 300-400 milligrams of caffeine plus other stuff on top of that. Not good for you. Raises blood pressure for certain and definitely increases heart rate. Long term, you're looking at a lot of damage on yourself. I know most young guys don't see things long term. They feel, I'm fine now. Nothing's wrong with me. But you know what? I'm 47 years old now. You start seeing what exactly you've done to yourself over the last 20 years. Luckily, I haven't damaged myself too badly. Nothing that I couldn't reverse. But, if I had to do it again, I would really advise myself. And one of the things I never did was use stimulants. So that really was something that I kind of stayed away from. But I do know a lot of people, indulge in them too much. Let's leave it at that.
I can attest to that. Dave is the one who does not drink caffeinated coffee in the office. Dave, we'll stick with our live chat box. This question from Ryan Reyes. Dave, what do you think about keto for a whole 15-week contest prep? Why or why not will it work?
Well, a ketogenic diet, like I recommend to a lot of people, works phenomenal. Now, not everyone starts out on a totally ketogenic diet the whole time. A lot of times I start out with a couple days of carbs here and there, just because people don't, if you can lose weight eating some carbs, then we'll keep them in there. I still keep them on a high protein, moderate fat regimen. What I find is once I have to pull the carbs because the person's metabolism has slowed down or they're not losing weight as quickly, usually with the women, the carbs come out pretty quick, is people like the diet better without the carbs. The reason is because the brain's preferred energy source is glucose, carbohydrates, okay? It'll always prefer that over anything. When you're eating a low-carb diet, when carbohydrate or glucose levels are low in the bloodstream, the brain doesn't have energy or fuel. And what it does is you get grumpy, cranky, you got food cravings. Okay, when you're in ketosis, once you've restricted carbs for 3 or 4 days, what happens is your brain switches its metabolism and starts burning fat as a fuel source, or ketones. That's what they basically essentially are, fat derivatives. And when you're in a state of ketosis, all that means is that your brain is using fat as a fuel and not carbohydrates. The advantage of that is the blood sugar levels are always stable. You're not hungry. You're not grumpy because you don't have this fluctuation in blood sugar. And even if you did, your brain is not dependent on the blood sugar for fuel. So the ketogenic diet is a terrific diet if you have troubles staying, on the course. If you have cravings that you wind up cheating, you won't have them on this diet. And I think that's why I recommend it, because I think it's the most functionally reproducible diet where people can do it, follow it, and succeed on it.
Dave, we're going to go back to the Muscle Central forum on rxmuscle.com, and this one is one that is really a big news topic in the bodybuilding industry. Dave, you've been a close acquaintance to Evan Centopani for many years, and writing your write-up on the whole situation yesterday held much truth. It was nice to see someone stand up for someone that has so much good intention. It is almost like it's make-believe. Do you believe that Evan will keep competing for the next couple of years, or when he says, see what the future holds, do you believe a man with a family and a very health-conscious perspective will see this as an opportunity to take a step back from the stage and focus more on his future with his family and fans in mind?
Well, I was working with Evan when he was an amateur, and I helped him obviously turn pro, and we had a good relationship, and I think I taught him a lot in terms of nutrition, and he's like a sponge. He sucked up everything, for me, and then he made it his own, which is what I want. I like empowering people to do that. I think people should think for themselves. And he tried a couple other diets and a couple other things, but Evan's always been very health conscious. And the only one criticism I always had of him was that he really didn't put himself out there enough, because people really liked him. They wanted to hear what he had to say, and he kind of was, he kind of secluded himself a little bit. I don't know what the reason was. He didn't really compete very much his first couple of years. I thought that was a bit of a mistake. But he's a genuinely good person, and he has good intentions. And I know that, he really wants to, he believes in supplements that work, that have real dosages. I'm sure if I had more money for my Species Nutrition Company, that him and I would be a good match together because we have the same, philosophical nutritional beliefs. I knew that I know that he's friends with PJ, and I knew that that was going to be a mistake for him going over to the Prime Nutrition Company, because I knew that their business model is a lot different. Their business model is sell product, and sometimes that doesn't coalesce well with someone who's got idealistic principles about what they want to see in nutritional products. And Evan is also very idealistic in the sense that he's moralistic. He's got moral convictions. He believes that people should act a certain way. And, he wasn't into all the goofiness, I guess, that was going on over there. Having said that, I think Evan is a terrific talent who still has yet to hit his potential. I think he has the ability to still improve under the right guidance. Hopefully he'll find the right guidance system and find the right people that he meshes with. I think it would be a mistake for him to stop competing at this point. I think he does it as healthily as possible, if that's even a word. And I think that he has a good 5 years left in him. And I think he can do that safely and successfully, and he can make money in this industry, and I think he should nurture that because that's his talent. To throw it away at this point after all the hard work and sacrifice he's gone through, I think would be a mistake. Obviously, that's got to come from him. He's got to feel it in his heart. He's got to have the passion. I think he's just doubting himself a little right now, but I think that he should get over that. There's no doubt in my mind that he could be an Arnold Classic champion at some point in the future, and I think it would be a mistake to miss that opportunity. We'll see what happens though.
That question was from forum user Animal. Wanted to give him credit for that. It is a very, very relevant topic, Dave. Let's go back to the Instagram page. This question from @RealYoungKobeBryant. Dave, I'm an insulin-type diabetic, and I really have problems to lose water in my midsection. What advice or tip can you give me to improve my midsection?
Whenever you have to take exogenous insulin as a diabetic, you're always going to retain fluid. Usually it's in the face. I know a few people that are diabetic. Whenever they would have a lot of carbs or cheat, and they have to take more insulin, I see it right away in the midsection. I see it right away in their face, and I could tell. I'm like, oh, you had a cheat meal, didn't you? So that just comes along with exogenous insulin. The best way to keep fluid retention down in those areas is don't eat a lot of carbohydrates in your diet. A ketogenic or close to ketogenic diet is great for diabetics. A lot of diabetics say, or a lot of people don't know, say, well, diabetics have to take in carbs because they're taking insulin. Well, you don't eat food to meet your insulin requirements. You take insulin to meet your carbohydrate or food requirements. In other words, you cater your insulin dosages to what you're going to eat, not vice versa. A lot of people say, well, the doctor told me take 8 units in the morning and this time. No, you got to cater your insulin units according to what you're eating. So you tell the insulin what to do, not vice versa. If you're feeling like you're a little bloated, instead of eating 60 grams of carbs in the morning, eat 30 grams or 20 grams of carbs in the morning and lower your insulin amounts. Once you do that, you won't retain as much fluid.
Stick with the Instagram handle. Again, it's @official_RXmuscle. This one from Cobb Diesel. Dave, when running Slin, everybody wants to shorten name now. Should the only carbs be the ones taken from the protocol and no others to stay lean?
I'm not sure what he means by the protocol, but if you're taking a certain amount of insulin units, you need to eat a certain amount of carbohydrates to basically feed the insulin, so to speak. So really what you want to do is you want to figure out what your goals are. If your goals are to gain weight, and you don't tend to get fat very easily, you probably can get away with 8 to 10 units of like a Humulin R, but then you got to eat 40 or 50 grams of carbs. The good thing about a Humulin R, which is a slightly shorter acting version of Humalog, which is very fast acting, is you only need to take about a half a gram of carbs per unit of insulin. So if you're taking 6 units of insulin, you're taking 30 grams of carbs. Whereas if you took a Humalog, if you took 6 units of Humalog, you'd have to take 60 grams of carbs in, which would be 10 grams per unit. So the 5 grams per unit is a little better, I think, and I think it works out a little better. Now, I don't know what he's talking about of extra sources of carbs, but the bottom line is whatever you take insulin-wise, you need to make sure you're taking enough carbohydrates in or you're going to get really low blood sugar.
Stick with the Instagram handle again @official_RXmuscle. We got a ton of questions from there, and we'll actually save a lot of them for the next episode. This question from, it's either Jesus or Jesus _Trado. Dave, why is there no judging physique guys in the leg department? Is the physique division, or it says, all right, I guess he means to ask, will the physique division take over eventually? Reason I ask this is because there are hundreds of physique guys in local shows and less bodybuilders competing in shows, especially here in the Southern California area.
You know what? In Southern California, I noticed that there's a lot more men's physique guys, a lot less bodybuilders. The rest of the country, that's not necessarily the case. You got a lot of men's physique guys, but the bodybuilder numbers are really good. So, in essence, bodybuilding is still healthy every place but California. But that's the look there. The beach body look is in California, the model acting look. So that doesn't surprise me. I think we're not losing bodybuilders. We're getting more people entering the sport, I think. We might be losing some genetic talent to the men's physique division, but I think by and far we're not too low on men's bodybuilders. Now, what was the other question? Part of the question?
Legs. Why are legs not judged?
Look, I've been saying this for years. I think that the men's physique guys should pose their leg. I think there should be a posing round. We proposed another division on Iron Debate, I think, a couple months ago, about what would be a great thing would be to see like a classic men's bodybuilding like they have in Europe, where the men, it's like a men's physique look, but they pose and they have legs and they're in posing trunks, and their weight is restricted by their height. So for every height class, you can only weigh so much, and it's a more aesthetic bodybuilder looking physique. I think that would be great to have 3 classes: men's physique, the classic bodybuilding, and then the open bodybuilding. Whether that'll happen anytime soon, we don't know, but I think that would be a good idea, so I do agree with you.
Let's go back to the live stream, live chat box. This question from Lo Lee. For a bikini competitor who takes a whole year off and decides to come back down, would you start a 2-week low-carb diet and then switch to keto the entire prep? Can this prep be done with Anavar and Clen only, or is the T3 needed?
Look, we're talking about bikini. With the bikini diet, these girls can diet on nothing. You don't need to take drugs, just food. Just get in shape. All you need is abs. And, you don't even have to have your butt that tight. You just need a round butt. So, is clenbuterol going to help? Do some women use a little bit of Anavar for bikini? I'm sure. It's definitely a shortcut. Clenbuterol is a better fat burner choice, other than, compared to some of the other ones, because it's not androgenic. It doesn't have any steroidal component to it, so it's not going to cause any side effects. Bikini beauty is very important in bikini. How you look physically is important. If you masculinize yourself taking, anabolic drugs, you're going to do worse. That's not going to bode well for you. So, to get back to your question, what's the best way to diet? I find that women lose weight best on ketogenic diets. That's just the way it works. I usually start them on a little bit of carbs, low carbs, and then I usually wind up pulling it out because they just can't lose that little last bit of fat. And women tend to cheat more than men do. I don't know why, but most women tend to have craving issues. And on a ketogenic diet, that just doesn't happen. So I would recommend that, yeah.
You're watching Ask Dave on rxmuscle.com, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Check out speciesnutrition.com. Dave, we go back to the Muscle Central forum on rxmuscle.com. Good question here from Mr. Immensity. Dave, sometimes I'll see a guy at the gym doing a lat pull-down variation whereby he brings the bar all the way down to his lap, ending with a sort of half tricep pushdown. It looks like a complete butchery of form, but perhaps it's some long-lost magical exercise that develops the lats and the triceps. Seriously, though, I've seen this several times over the years, and I just can't fathom how even a beginner could do the exercise that way and think it's right. Am I supposed to help people when I see them doing exercises so comically wrong? Part of me wants to because they don't know it's wrong, but I've always just let nature take its course. What do you do in those situations?
You know what? I'm horrified to see some of the stuff that people are doing in the gym. I really am horrified. I've stopped people from doing things because I thought they were going to be killed. I've seen Steve Weinberg on the camera spot someone trying to squat like 8 plates on each side, like 8 45s on each side, like almost 700 something pounds. The guy couldn't squat 300 pounds, and he ran out and stopped the guy before he did it. He had like a bench underneath his body. He was going to. People do crazy stuff in there. But you know what the truth is? When I first started training, and I'll admit this, I would watch people at the gym, and I'd see them do these crazy exercises. You know what? I would think, well, these guys look like they know what they're doing. I got to do that too. And I got involved. I did some stupid stuff when I first started because I just didn't know any better. I didn't know, the form looked weird. It didn't feel right to me, but I'm like, well, if they're doing it and they had some decent, everyone had, when you first start, everyone has better development than you do. So I'm like, well, this guy must know what he's talking about. So unfortunately, it's addictive. In other words, people do these nutty things and other people watch and then they start doing it. And before you know it, the whole gym's doing it. And so I think if you know what you're talking about and you can present it to the person in a learned, non-threatening way, I always go up and if I see someone doing something crazy and I say, look, I don't know if you want my advice, but you're really not doing this right. And most of the time people will say, well, what am I doing wrong? And then I explain it to them. So I think it's a good idea. You can prevent a lot of injury and a lot of wasted time if you do that.
Time for a couple of more questions. Dave, this one from our live stream, live chat box from Tom Ramsey. Dave, whenever I train abs, even simple body weight crunches, I seem to get a terrible abdominal cramp. Any way to avoid this? I take in plenty of salt and I use V-Mineralize.
He's a client of mine. You know what, Tom? A lot of people have complained about this to me. If you're taking enough salt in and enough, we're assuming that, a lot of people think they're taking enough salt in and they're not. They take it like one meal they salt their food. But if you're salting your food pretty good and getting enough sodium in the diet, could be a magnesium or potassium or a calcium problem. But I know you're taking the V-Mineralize, so that's probably not likely. I don't know if you're taking any clenbuterol. Clenbuterol does cause cramping in weird muscles like under the chin, abdominals, calves. I've seen that happen, even inner thighs. So that could be an issue. If that's not the case, I would go for a blood screening and I would get all my electrolytes measured, which is this basic blood SMA 20. And you should be able to see if you're deficient in anything because a lot of times cramping is an indicator that something's not right.
We'll take one more question. Again, we thank all of you for taking the time to ask all these questions. We're going to save them for the next episode. Dave, this question is from Adam James Cooper. This is on our Instagram page. How should someone approach post-contest nutrition after a show? Should they just double up their carb intake straight away or just add 100 to 200 calories a week?
What I usually do is, I always believe in a base of high protein and moderate fat. That's all my diets have that in there implicitly because that's what our bodies require. To repair muscle, you need high protein, moderate fat, high in essential fatty acids. So that never changes. What I tell people to do post-contest after you get a couple days of eating out of your system, go back to add about 35 grams of carbohydrates, clean carbohydrates, rice, potatoes, oats, to these protein and fat meals that you're having 5 or 6 times a day, whether you're a man or a woman. If you're a woman, I'd probably add maybe 25 grams of carbs and do that for 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, until your body kind of normalizes itself. It takes at least a month. And I'm telling you this, a lot of you guys might compete out there and you can relate to what I'm saying, or maybe you're competing in your first show, you're not even aware of what's going to happen. You're not going to feel good for the first month after your show is over when you start eating more food. You're going to get an upset stomach, you're going to get indigestion, you're going to feel tired. You're not going to know why you don't feel right, especially after a week or two has passed. It could take up to a month to start feeling normal. That's just the way it goes, and you have to understand that and be ready for it. That's why it's important that you just don't go back to the gym full steam ahead, because you're going to burn yourself out more than likely and or get hurt. So be careful. I remember Craig Titus years ago, about 3 days after he competed, he was in the gym. He gained about 40 pounds of water weight after the show. He felt strong as an ox. He went into the gym. They were bench pressing there, and he's like, I could bench more than you. And the guy had like 500 pounds on the bar. He got under the 500 pounds, no warm up, and did 1 rep and tore his pec. So, be careful.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Ask Dave on RxMuscle.com. Once again, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Again, if you're in the Southwest Florida area, tune in to WINK-TV, the local CBS affiliate, 6 a.m. Dave is going to be live on the CBS affiliate. Till next time, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. Have a good day.